Hiya. So normally I don't talk much in these bug hunt videos, but I thought that I might explain something that I found in while testing this base here. First, let's go inside. Now you might notice that let's do that again because okay, there we go. Now you might notice only half the base is lit up, and if I walk around here like this, the frame rate doesn't look all that bad, but let's see what happens when we put in the rest of the lights, and I'm just using the normal lights here. And I do want to point out that I don't have any mods installed or anything. I am on Linux, so that could be causing some problems, but I don't think this is a Linux specific thing. So I'll be back in a second. It's also apparent that I had lights here before because we have all of these wires. So you might already guess what's about to happen. And now that we have them put in, let's start turning them on. That's going to take less time than putting them in. At this point, you might be able to start seeing the frame rate is beginning to starting to suffer here now that we've got all these lights on. Okay, there we go. Now we have all the lights on, and we'll turn back over here. And it's not as bad as it was before. I think they might have optimized it a little bit. I didn't read the last patch notes, but I don't know how well this is coming through, but you can see the frame rate is slower. A couple patches ago, this was much better, much worse. I mean, it would be going like this, dun, 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 dun. Now, you might think, oh, it's all of these wind particles that are doing it. It's not. If I shut the wind particles off, and then we wait for it to calm down a little bit, we can see that there is still a bit of a performance drop here. But if we go in between, like right here, and we look this way, you can see how much smoother it is. Now I'll go to the end here, and then I will turn my settings up all the way. Okay, now with everything turned on to extreme, you can see how goddamn slow everything is. But as we start getting closer to the side of the map here, we can see, or not the map, the room, sorry, I have hiccups. We can see that things are a lot faster. They're not super fast, but they're a lot faster. And we will go on to the other side over here. There we go. And then we will go back into settings over here. And you can see that everything is turned up to extreme or high or whatever. I guess I turned the pixel light count down at some point. I didn't turn it back on. But if I go to shadows and I disable that, come on. Now, there we go. Everything is suddenly all right. Now, before the last update, it seemed like even with the shadows turned down, the lights themselves were causing problems, and I think that's because if we look at these lights over here, if you can see the mouse pointer. Can you see the mouse pointer? Yes, you can. You can see that there's little dots of light. Now, that is the center globe, or whatever you want to call it, where the lights generate from. And you can see over here over here. Now you might think, oh, that's the reflection. No, this part right here is not the reflection. If we get closer, we can see, you see it disappear and come back in, depending how far we are from it. So that is, I think they put that into the game so that you can put a beacon, you can put a tower and a beacon up on a tower to see lights from far away, so that you get less lost. Now, I do think that these reflections did have something to do with it a couple of updates ago. I haven't read the patch notes, but I think the patch notes fixed some reflective problems, which was originally causing these things to screw up here. But it seems to be mostly shadows now. So even if I go here and I put the pixel lighting count all the way up to full, and we go back in the game, it is still fairly smooth. So it has to do with the shadows, and is not really shadow detail. If we go back into the settings and we put shadows to low, see, we can already see, and then if we put shadows to high or extreme, there isn't that much of a drop. It's almost the same. I think this may have something to do with some kind of error in the implementation. That there's just a minor bug that's causing shadows to take up more computational power than they should. And I don't think this has anything to do with rendered distance, because I think the light sources. So these particular light sources here. So when I'm talking about lights, let's go to the things. These aren't real lights. These are tricks. These are just color changes. But these are actual lights. Okay, something's happening. And what happened was the game crashed. That might not be completely due to Stationeers. There has been some updates with the Linux kernel lately that have made like video compositing and things like that a little bit unstable. But now that all the lights are gone again, if we turn shadows up all the way, I turned some of the settings back down because I don't want them that high, even though it's pretty smooth. We can see that with half the lighting, even with that turned up all the way. Let's turn up the other settings all the way too, just to show that it's not limited to whatever I'm trying to say right now. I'm going to leave this in so I sound like an idiot. I like sounding like an idiot. It lets people know that I don't actually know what I'm talking about. We don't want the weather. Okay. So now that we've got everything up, we can see that there is some frame rate loss here. It's not, I don't think I could live with this, but see, without the light sources, it's done. Now, I think I was beginning to say that this is part of the problem here, that when a light source becomes distant, they continue to render the distant light sources. And one of the reasons they do that is so you can see things off in the distance. But in this room, you then have 50 light sources all being rendered all at once, no matter how far away you are from the source. So we're pretty far away from that. If they wanted to, they could optimize. They can make the rendering more efficient by blobbing all of this light together. You can then say, like, you can then come up with the differential in your head that if this light and this light are triangulated to be less than 5 degrees apart, you combine all the light sources together. And that would save a lot of rendering power when you're further away. Now, when you're really up close like this, when you have like a whole pile of sources, let's do this. Let's go back. So right here, we're starting to see that we're seeing the distant light rendering effect coming in. Now, the way that you can set this up to be more efficient is that you can determine if there is an abundance of light sources or a high level of light between you and the distant light source. Like, say you have, let's stand in front of one here. Say that you have like this. If you have a determination to say that the character is standing in front of a bunch of lights, and realistically this light down here, these lights down here, would be washed out, then those don't have to be rendered. So basically, you'd be checking like say 3 squares from the character, like up to here. You'd be checking that area here to see if or just in front of the character, to see if it's the character's eyesight would be washed out by light. So if the vision should be washed out, then do not render these little blobbies. But if you are really far away and the check kind of determines that, within the 3 squares up to here, you have no light source, or no direct light source, or no light source in between the two lights, between yourself and the distant light sources, then you would go to the next function to determine where you're going to have distant light sources. Then you would then put in another check to say, if you have a lot of light sources grouped together, instead of individually rendering them, you render them all together with increased intensity. So what would naturally follow from there is this section. I'm making a lot of hand movements that you can't see. This section right here, you would group all of these individual light sources together into one point, wherever the average center is, and you would boost up the intensity so that would look particularly bright. And maybe over here, you might have like 1 or 2, like one here and one here. Depending on how you optimize the angle between the 2 points that you're trying to determine. And then as you walk away from these light sources and the angle gets smaller and smaller and smaller, they all group together into one source. And in that way, you no longer have to calculate as many shadows. Now, again, I don't think it's just shadows, because I wasn't really paying attention when it crashed, but I think the reason it crashed is because I ran out of VMemory. My card doesn't have a lot of VRAM in it, but I think that these calculations here aren't being optimized really well, so you have a lot of floating points, you have a lot of decimal places behind things. Which is just taking up a lot of space and requiring a lot of calculations per second. But yeah, I think that's what the bug is. It's either shadows or that it's the actual light. The pixel setting over here, pixel light setting, that just has to do with reflections and stuff like that. I think, I'm not entirely sure, and I don't think that's it. I think the 2 bugs are shadows and how light is rendering, and specifically how light is rendering from these kinds of lights, not from the portable lights, not from the flashlights, just from these specific lights there. And you might be saying, well, setting up these checks would be computationally intensive as well, but it's not. And it's actually a very common industry standard not to render things the character isn't looking at. So when you're looking at single player games like The Last of Us or something like that, everything behind the camera isn't rendered, and everything in front of stuff, in front of an object, or on the other side of an object from where you're looking, is also not rendered. So if you're looking at a building everything inside that building, including the back of that building's walls, aren't being rendered. Whereas in games such as Stationeers and probably Ark Survival, I'm not sure how Ark Survival is optimized, those things would be rendered regardless, because there is less of a pressure, less of a drive to optimize those kind of things. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion in the industry nowadays that those types of games will not render the best. Now you can actually see these optimizations in Stationeers occurring if you get pushed into the ground, because when you get pushed in the ground and you look upwards, you can't see the ground. You can't see the texture of the ground, and that's because they're using standard voxel calculation. So all the ground is a voxel. It's got little points. It's like a deformed. You don't care about this stuff. So all of that is really standardized. They probably got it off of whatever that website that's not coming to mind that everybody goes to grab code pieces from, and also from like the Unity forums and things like that just tell you the best way to optimize it. But it can be done in this kind of a situation where you'll have a check that says, render this, don't render this. Okay, this is rendering